Let me just say it's an honor to be here. But before we get started, I want everybody, close your eyes. Okay, I'll make sure nobody's cheating. Close your eyes. Okay. Now, think about the connections you have in this room, in your job, in your life. And now think about how you interact with each of those groups of folks and ask yourself these questions. Am I acting with intention for all the connections in my life? Are these connections an active part of what I do, think, feel, or are some of them just background characters in a bigger story? Open your eyes. I hope by the end of this talk, you'll be on your way to having better answers and maybe a plan for those questions. I hope by the end of this talk, you'll have some of those answers or maybe a plan on how to get to those answers to those questions. As our fine MC said, my name is Patrick Fortner. Some of you know me from Red Mic Messages. These are daily live streams I do every morning at 6:30 before I go to my real job. Did one this morning, in fact, a little short one, but live streaming right now. I start every one of them with the same intro. Red Mic Messages are leadership and life lessons I've picked up for 25 years as a public servant, 16 years as a youth football coach and scouting volunteer, and 10 years as a mediocre athlete with far more heart than actual physical ability. It's true. It's not just self-deprecating. I played at one of the largest, well, back then, the largest classification in Texas football was 5A. I played at a 5A school. My playing weight, I was 5'10", 176 pounds. I had no business playing 5A football, nor did I have any business playing lineman, but I did. Don't let anybody fool you. Linemen are the real stars of the team. Throughout my career, well, before I get into that, a little bit more about me. I am a pop culture geek, and that goes from everything from sci-fi to TV to sports. You name it, there's probably, and I'm going to be making a lot of those references today. And as a nod to the sci-fi and the pop culture and all of that, I'm going to make a reference to the dog Doug from the movie Up, the cartoon Up. How many of you saw it? Okay. Doug, I like to say that Ted Lasso is my spirit animal, but really Doug is my spirit animal because I have ADOS. That's not attention deficit. That's ADOS, attention deficit. Ooh, shiny. So if I get off track, I apologize, but it's going to happen. And I'm also a big extrovert, as anybody who knows me more than 2 minutes can tell you. But I've led teams in high pressure, state agency roles. I've had to fire people I respected. I've sat across the table from auditors and investigators and legislators and, well, kids who forgot their cleats. But in every one of those, the same three things always mattered. And that's people, process, and purpose. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to lead by connection, not by command. We're going to talk about how to build trust, bridge gaps, and to really drive results through that Ted Lasso framework of leadership. And I'm going to tell you some real stories that have, dirt on the cleats and under the fingernails, awkward silences, a few lessons that I learned along the way. Here's one to kick things off. Several years back, my younger son, he's now almost 24, he was in his second year of 8-man tackle football. Central Texas Youth Football League. He played for the Hill Country Cowboys. For a while, I was their voiceover guy when I wasn't coaching. Well, we started the season with 10 players, which is not a big deal, 8-man football. It's a small team. But we ended up losing one kid to a broken arm. We lost another one because he just didn't want to do it anymore and he quit. So that left us with 8 people. Ironman football for 6 and 7-year-olds. Yeah, do that math again. Well, one weekend we went out of town. Basically playing in the riverbed, and their clock was broken. So that meant the officials were keeping it by hand, and they weren't doing a really good job. The first half lasted almost as long as an entire game would have, and with 8 kids, we were gassed. We were holding our own up until halftime, but After halftime, the wheels fell off. By the end of the game, we were down by 2 scores. The kids were just worn out. There was less than a minute left, and we fumbled near our goal line. Now, this isn't college. This isn't OU running the score up, but this team decided to do it. So they call a timeout. Less than a minute left in the game. They're winning by 2 scores. They call a timeout, and then they punch it in for another score. How many of you have kids that played sports? And if that happened to you, raise your hand. How many of you had kids that played sports? Now, if that happened to your kid and you weren't the coach, how mad would you have been? Well, I was both, and I was livid. I was furious. Of course, I'm shaking the kids' hands. Good game, good game, good game, because it was. They played well. They beat us fair and square. But got to their coaches. I looked their head coach dead in the eye. He held out his hand, and I turned around and walked off. He knew that he had ripped his britches. I was not putting up with it. Now, in this league, at the end of the season, everybody got a postseason game, right? They call it a bowl game. Just so happened, we, with no wins, were playing that team with 1 win. But we were playing at our stadium with a real scoreboard and a real clock, and things were different. And our kids, they were fired up. They were ready to go. Almost to the end of the game, we're up by 1 score. We've got the ball. Part of me wanted to try to run the score up. But realistically, we had 8 players. So we just needed to burn clock. I couldn't call a timeout. I couldn't take a knee because, I didn't want to give them an opportunity. I wanted to do ball control. So I called a slow developing play. It's called a naked bootleg. How many of you know what a naked bootleg is? Anybody? Okay. All right. Naked bootleg. 1 person. Yay. Basically what a naked bootleg is the quarterback takes the snap, he fakes it, and then he runs around the other way. Same thing Peyton Manning did to the Dallas Cowboys in his last season when he was playing for the Broncos. Love Peyton, but boo his. And they've been stopping it all day. Well, my quarterback, a really scrappy kid, his older brother ended up playing pro baseball for a couple of years. Well, this kid shook off 2 tackles and he took it to the house. Now, of course, I was excited for him, but at the same time, I didn't want them to think that I had done what they did, intentionally running the score up. So after the game, we're doing a good game, good game, good game. They make a beeline for their head coach. And before I could even get anything out of my mouth, he said, I owe you an apology. He said, it's my fault, but my offensive coordinator called the timeout. He sent in a play that I didn't want. He said, and as far as that last score, he said, we'd been stopping it all game. I'm not upset. Your quarterback just had a hell of a play. So that taught me something that I knew before from playing high school ball myself. Lead with humility, coach with class, but play with memory. Finish with integrity, though. You can have that memory in the back of your head. You can have that fire burning in your gut that you want to show these people up. But again, finish with integrity, because to me, that's what real leadership looks like. Now, in government, you know that quite often relationships are held together with good intentions and duct tape and small budgets. Visions, agencies, stakeholders, sometimes they don't play nice. They just don't. People act out of self-interest, and you might end up taking the hit personally. You lose ground, you lose credit, or you catch heat for something that's not your fault. Then maybe the script flips a little bit and they need you. They need you to help push a policy or fix a problem or make something happen. In that moment, you can make a choice. You can respond with your ego and make them pay for it in that moment, or you can respond with purpose. One of those feels great for a minute. It really does. We're human. Getting the better of somebody, yeah, it's going to feel great for that moment. But the other road, that's the one that's going to build your reputation for your entire career. Those are the kind of moments you've got to take that higher road. Sort of like in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Any other sci-fi Star Trek geeks in here? All right, good. You remember the episode where Captain Jellicoe temporarily took over the Enterprise and Captain Picard got held captive? Anybody? Okay. Okay, good. She knows. Riker was the first in command. And he and Jellicoe were button heads the entire time because Jellicoe didn't lead the way Picard did, and it got under Riker's skin. He thought, you don't respect me. You don't respect the way we do things here. And Jellicoe's attitude was, I'm here to get things done. I don't have to worry about cracking eggs because I'm making an omelet, and we'll worry about those eggshells later. So he basically told Riker, all right, you got to take a seat. You're relieved of command. But got to a point where they had a special flying thing that they needed to do. They needed the best pilot on the ship, and that was Riker. Jellicoe had to swallow his pride. He had to go to Commander Riker and say, I need you to do this. Will you do it? And he said, you've got to ask me. And he did. Riker said yes, without ego, without payback. He did the right thing for the right reason at the right time. Now, taking the high road, you don't have to pretend that the bad stuff didn't happen. You remember the lesson, but don't repeat the offense. Don't go there. Be a better person. Lead with professionalism. Don't lead with pettiness, because if you're going to be petty, then people are going to dislike you. They're going to talk about you behind your back, and they're not going to respect you. Real leadership starts and finishes with integrity. That's what I call commanding without ego. Trust is going to beat volume. It's not always about being in charge. You can lead even if, you're the only person that you tell what to do. Sometimes you got to do what I call leading sideways. It's actually a book. Look it up. It's called Leading Sideways. It's a great book. It's about being a good team member and leading by example. That's how you earn respect. That's how you can have clarity both in your role and also clarity that you communicate to other people. Solving problems without the title. That is the heart of command without ego. Show your team and others that you know what you're doing and that they can feel confident in your role on that team. You probably know people that make a meeting just a little bit better because they're in it. And it's not because they take charge, but because they steady the room. They calm the temperature. They lower that temperature in the room, and they make things a little bit better. That kind of presence, that's a level of trust that we should all aspire to. Now, raise your hands if you know somebody like that. Okay. Well, not everybody. Well, then if you don't know somebody like that, then you need to be that person for the other people in your team. Because if you don't know somebody like that on your team or in your organization, your teammates don't either. So that's where you have to step up, and you've got to be that person. Have you seen the movie Hoosiers? Absolutely my favorite sports movie of all time. Anybody? Hoosiers? Okay. I used to talk about Hoosiers all the time when I was coaching. The kids used to get tired of it, actually, because I would quote the movie all the time, and they knew that when we put our hands in, we were going to go feed, and do all of that. Well, Gene Hackman plays a former college coach, and he was disgraced at the end of his career, and he ends up in this small town in Indiana where they live and breathe basketball. And he goes in, and his coaching methods, his teaching methods are completely different. It's all about discipline and team first. And for the first several practices, they don't even take a shot at the basket. He's teaching them the footwork and the passing and all of those things. Well, he starts to win. And yeah, there's talent, and that's a part of it, but it's not just talent. He's winning with connection. The boys towards the middle and end of the season, all of that early season stuff, early practice stuff, the passing and the drilling and the running and all of that, all the stuff that they hated, they came to embrace it because they figured out that's why we're winning. That's why we are succeeding. They figured out it's not about the flash. It's not about the scoring. It's about trust and teamwork and doing the hard stuff first. It's like that old story of the college professor. He's got that glass jar, and he says, okay. And he puts a whole bunch of rocks in it. He says, is this full? And they're like, yeah. And he goes, no, it's not. Puts a bunch of pebbles in. And he says, is it full? And still some people go, yeah. And he goes, oh. Then he pours dirt in it. seemingly filling everything. And they go, well, yeah, we don't know what the answer is here. And he goes, it's still not full. Well, then he pours water in, and the water fills every other part of that glass. And he tells them, okay, if you don't put the big things in first, and that's your job, that's your family, that's your responsibilities, you're not going to have room for the other things that make your life full. And that's your friends, that's your uh, hobbies, that's your other parts of your life. So get the big things done first. Well, that's what Coach Dale did. Now they end up in the championship game, and he wants to send the message about, hey, it's the same stage, it's just bigger. So what does he do? He pulls out a tape measure. He has one of the littlest kids on the team get on the biggest kid's shoulders, and they hold the tape measure from the top of the basketball goal all the way down. And then he measures that, and then he measures from the baseline all the way to the free throw line. And then he tells them, he says, I think you'll find that those exact same measurements are the same as our tiny little gym back at Hickory. And one of them gets this big smile on his face, probably one of the dumber kids on the team, but he gets this big smile on his face, like, hey, I get this. I figure it out. Now, a lot of good coaches will copy, and I was no exception. I had a team back in Wichita Falls. That's where I'm from, born and raised Wichita Falls, son of a welder and a bank teller. The only silver spoon I knew was that really bad show, Rick Schroeder. Anyway, I was coaching my team, and we got to play at the high school stadium on turf. And, kids, I could tell they were overwhelmed, even though this team was loaded for bear. We just steamrolled all the way through the regular season. And I had to measure the sideline to sideline and the end zone to end zone. And I said, it's the same size field. Stakes are bigger, but it's the same game. I go out there and play your game. We ended up winning the championship 38-6. A couple of those kids ended up playing college ball, but most of them didn't. So if you've got any illusions that your kid's going to be the next, Vince Young, he might be, but chances are football is going to be more to teach him a little bit about life and about how to pick yourself up when you get knocked down. Coach Dale, at one point during the season, he said, support who we are, not who we are not. He was telling the fans, respect everybody who has shown up. And I say that all the time. History is made by those who show up. And he just had to tell them, hey, it's 5 players on the floor all the time, playing consistently. And that's how trust works. No titles, just effort, clarity, and shared commitment. Now, my favorite character in the movie Hoosiers was Shooter, recovering alcoholic, more alcoholic than recovering you really in most of the movie. But his advice during a game where he ended up having to coach because Coach Dale got thrown out on a technical foul, he said, now, boys, don't get caught watching the paint dry. Now, what he meant by that was do the work, stay present in the moment, and finish strong. You know this. You've got this. That's the kind of quiet confidence that you need to express to your fellow teammates, or if you're in a leadership role, to the people who report to you. Because leadership by connection, it means that you build the habits. And you don't do that by cramming for the test the night before. You have to build that trust long before they need it. And when it's time to execute, whether it's on a basketball court, in a call center, or in a policy meeting, your teammates need to know all of that. And if they do know that, they're not going to flinch when the hard things happen, because they're going to know ultimately that the lines on the floor don't matter. It's the effort. It's that end product. I used to work with a guy named Billy Hamilton. Anybody? Okay, big hands. Come on. I know it's early, but let's get excited. Billy Hamilton. All right. Billy Hamilton was basically the finance guru and Yoda in state government and at the comptroller's office. There's not a bolt on the deck plate of the Texas budget that he didn't know how to figure out. Billy, want to talk about quiet consistency? That's Billy Hamilton. He never raised his voice that I heard. He never needed to, because when Billy talked, he was like E.F. Hutton in those old commercials. When E.F. Hutton talks, everybody listens well. When Billy Hamilton whispers, That's as good as somebody else yelling at the top of their lungs. His power was not in the volume. It was in his consistency. It was his credibility. And he earned that trust one day at a time, one accomplishment at a time, one lesson at a time. Just yesterday, Sean with DPS, great presentation, by the way. I loved it. And like Sean, my younger son is in Daniel as well. Well, Sean mentioned Simon Sinek. Great author, great book, does presentations. Leaders eat last. And that's a great thing to say, but I'm going to tweak that a little bit. Leaders don't just eat last. They sweep up after. They thank the server and they tip double when no one's looking. You want to build a strong team? Show up, stay late, and own the problems before they own you. When I was executive director at Texas Board of Chiropractic Examiners, one of the first things I did, I told my team I wanted to implement what I call the 3-ring system. Now, what I meant by that was by the 3rd ring, I wanted that call answered. Otherwise, I was going to. So I had them, put my phone in the queue. And I did that for a lot of reasons. Some people said, well, did you not trust them? No, I trusted them completely. But I also knew small agency at the time, it was a sub-$1 million annual budget. And we had a lot of, not a lot of people, but they were all working very hard. I did trust them, but I also knew that things were going to happen and that 3-ring policy might not be able to happen. So what do? You step up, do the job. So I had them put my number in the queue, and then I figured, okay, if I hear the ring, I'm going to pick up because they're busy. And I knew that they weren't, gold ribbon. I knew that they were doing their jobs. By the way, best staff I've ever worked with. I miss them very much every day. I didn't assume that anybody was slacking. I needed them to know exam. So I stepped up. I answered a lot of calls, and it came in handy too, because I was new and I knew where to look up all the information, and the caller didn't have to know that I was looking it up. So sometimes I was on the internet, on our website, on the rules page and stuff like that. And then I would give them the answers. Now, here's the payoff I saw. I overheard my operations director one day telling somebody on her staff, we have to be better about answering the phones so Patrick doesn't have to. And I was both blown away and really kind of humbled by that, because I didn't tell anybody on staff that answering the phone was a menial job. I don't consider anything beneath me. So I talked to her about it later that day, and I said, hey, I overheard you say that. And I want you to know that 3-ring policy is not supposed to put any pressure on you. I don't want that to be what you take from that. I'm just stepping up and doing what I need to. And she said, the staff believes in you. They believe in your goals. They believe in what you're doing. We don't want to let you down. Man, I got to tell you, still chills to this day. Leadership to me is like you're running a ship, right? More often than not, if you're the boss, you're out here, right? But if things slow down, you might have to go below deck and grab an oar. You might have to grab a shovel and toss some coal into the fire. Mop the floor, take the call, bring your people a glass of water or a cold drink if they need it, if they're stressed, if they're working hard. And it's not performative. It's not because anybody's watching. It's because you are with them. You are not above them. Excuse me. By the way, red mic messages tumbling, available near you. One of my former jobs, I was the last person out the door at Texas Residential Construction Commission. We were sunsetted. Last agency really to be sunsetted, because other agencies have missed their sunset, but they kept going, right? They got moved to another agency, or they got moved to the governor's office, or they got moved to TDLR or whatever. They shut us down. And sunset was both kind and unkind about it. They said, "Hey, staff works hard. They're doing everything that they're supposed to, but we think what they're doing is stupid." And it wasn't that matter of fact. Bottom line is, we had a process here that we had to follow, but unfortunately there was underlying law that made what we do really not work all that well. Wasn't our fault. We did this great, but the underlying stuff was garbage. So, but they made me the acting executive director for the last year the agency was open. And if you've never shut down an agency, I really highly recommend that you don't put yourself in that position. The one thing I didn't want to be is I did not want to be Sam in the last episode of Cheers, saying to the, "Sorry, we're closed," and then turn around and turning all the lights off. Well, I was. In that last year, I did everything I could to help everybody on my team find their next roles if they wanted one. I wrote a recommendation a bunch of recommendation letters, but I helped one girl get into a master's program. I helped another guy with a recommendation letter, and he's now a cop out in Bastrop. Actually, I think he's a deputy in Bastrop. Anyway, it was hard. It was tough. I ended up moving from there to the General Land Office, Veterans Land Board, another place I miss dearly because I love working with veterans. But you might be wondering, what's that all about? Well, in a leadership role, sometimes you are like that goalie. You are the last line of defense. You let your team do all the skating and the passing and the scoring and everything else. But if it slips through, you're the one, you've got to stop that puck because you're that finger in the dike, keeping that water from flowing out and destroying the village. So remember that, but don't pound your chest. Sorry, I talk with my hands and tend to do things like that. I apologize. Meanwhile, she's over here going, "Yeah, thanks." Don't pound your chest. Try not to take credit. One thing I've always tried to do is, when I worked for Carol Stringhorn, and she was Rylander when I worked for her, she used to have me put in all of her speeches that as Texans, we stand on the shoulders of giants, which I agree. It's completely true. So give your staff credit. Don't take it. Even if everybody knows that you had a big hand in it, don't take credit. One of the only things I did take public credit for was one that everybody knew that there was no way that I couldn't take credit for. And that was when we created the nation's first paid chiropractic director. And we did that because we wanted consistency of our expert reports. We wanted consistent timing on our expert reports. We wanted them all to have the same voice, same writing, and everything else. And it wasn't worthy of a full-time role. So we created a chiropractic director role, put it in our LAR, put it in our strat plan. And thankfully the legislature said, "Yeah, you're right. There ought to be a law." So they wrote it out, went from being a bill to being a part of our regular work. And other than that, anytime we did anything great, anytime we did anything bad, great stuff, I gave them the credit. The bad stuff, I took the blame. Titles don't protect you from the grind. They don't excuse you. They obligate you to the grind. And that's how you make things repeatable. That's how you earn respect. You're going to get it one act of service at a time. And you always have to remember your people come first. Okay, now we're going to talk about the second P in my discussion today. How are we doing on time? I got about 20 minutes, right? Yeah. Okay, second P, process. Do the work that matters. Process is how we make trust repeatable. It's what separates lightning from a lightning bug. And I can tell you, you cannot wing it and win it. Before a big speech, before this, I rehearsed, I practiced, I read it over and over and over again. There's no way I was going to memorize 15 pages though, so that's why I've got my notes in front of me. In high school, our coach, Joe Bob Tyler, great guy, mountain of a man, just arms like this. He was a POW during World War II, got down to like 135 pounds. And this guy normally was, 190 and solid as a rock. But he had a thing that he would say every day: perfect practice makes perfect. Not practice makes perfect, because if you practice the wrong thing, you're going to do the wrong thing when it matters. So work hard to have perfect practice. You could probably ask my wife and she'd tell you, yeah, I heard him over he's been reading this speech for, weeks now. Sort of like in both Rocky 2 and in Rocky 3, a couple of Rocky moments. In Rocky 2, until Adrian said, go win, he was sort of just going through the motions. And then in Rocky 3, once he finally started training like it mattered, that's when he got his eye of the tiger back. One of the best players I ever coached, pound for pound, was also one of the smallest kids I ever coached. Kid had a heart that wouldn't quit, though. Same age as my younger son. They played ball together several years. I went to their middle school award ceremony, their 8th grade year, and he won their Tiger Heart Award, Garisti Middle School. And he asked for a picture after everything was over. And he said, well, Coach, I just remembered what you said all the time, was that it didn't matter how big you were if you had heart. And I got to tell you that, it made me tear up, but also made me really proud that, that message got through, because he's a great kid. And I kid you not, he was this big. I mean, maybe 100 pounds soaking wet when I coached him, and would just run through a wall. I mean, no fear whatsoever. So if you want results, don't shortcut the process. Honor it, invest in it, sweat in private so you don't bleed in public, because no job is too small. It's like the butterfly effect, but in terms of not time travel, but in terms of just that continued motion throughout your whole process. I mean, chances are you've worked in places where nobody owns anything, where performance measures are vague, where the staff feels overworked and underled. And that's what happens when the process is optional. If your systems are sloppy, if you don't trust people, or worse, if trust breaks, results are going to stall, morale's going to drop, and that's when you're really going to get tested. So don't wait. Don't ignore that check engine light. Fix it now, because problems do not age well. And even the small stuff can teach you big lessons. You ever been in a restaurant and you try to pour pepper out of the thing and it won't come? Anybody? Sure. Yeah. So what do? You take the lid off and you figure out, oh, they filled it all the way up to the top. It's overflowing. And because of that, there's no way for the pepper to go up and down. Without that up and down motion, that pepper's not going to come out of that hole, no matter how hard you shake it. Same thing. I know with all of you being in state office buildings, you've had to deal with this issue in the bathrooms, where you go to get a paper towel and you pull it and it rips. Why? Because the staff thought, oh, well, I don't want to have to come back anytime soon, so I'm going to put all the paper in there that I can, right? So what do you end up doing? You either rip it, each up about 1/4 of an inch, you grab a bunch and you pull them out like that, and then you end up with more towels than you need, right? Both of those processes are just messed up. They're wasteful, they're frustrating, they're unnecessary. And they're not saving any time by overfilling it. It's the same thing if you look at your calendar. If you look at your calendar and it looks like this. Anybody? Anybody have calendars like that? Yeah. You have calendars like that, chances are you're shortchanging something, aren't you? Is that your calendar? I'm so sorry. I did not mean to hack you like that. So think about it in your organization. If your workflow is jammed, if your calendar is packed back to back to back with meeting tasks and obligations, there's no room for creativity. There's no margin for error. There's no space for that rest and recharge that you need. That's like that pepper shaker that's too full. Nothing good can come out of that, no matter how hard you shake. Yeah. Or you're using the wrong process for your goals. And I've lived this. In 2015 and 2016, I was out of work nearly a year. And tuition was on the horizon, and debt, and man, My wife figured out that, I mean, she knew I was going through it, but she figured out because I stopped whistling. Anybody who's been around me, they know if you hear Patrick whistling, that's a good thing because that means Patrick's in a good mood. And she said she knew because I wasn't whistling. I wasn't singing around the house. I wasn't doing those things. And it all piled up on me. And the same thing applies at work. If you fill your team with nothing but stress and deadlines and busy work, you're going to squeeze out the room that they need to grow, lead, innovate. And if you fill your own life with resentment, envy, distraction, you're going to burn out way before you get to that finish line. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. What's in your pepper shaker? How much is in that pepper shaker? If it's too much, hand some of it off. Put it in no shaker. You got to have some room. Make room in the process for what matters. Leave margins for your life and use tools that fit, because process without ownership, that's just bureaucracy. And process with ownership, that's how things go from good to great. Here's another truth. Oh, I missed a slide. I'm sorry about that. Okay, process, it's just clutter. Okay. All right. If you want the job, I think my slides are out of order. I apologize. Oh, well, they don't really follow the slides anyway. Okay. If you want the job, start acting like you have it. You want a promotion, don't wait for the title. Start leading by example. Start by building bridges, solving problems, mentoring other people. And sometimes mentoring can be just as important as anything else. Just being in the room and being somebody that they know they can come to and bounce stuff off of. And if you're still thinking about that salt and pepper analogy, don't forget, a pinch of salt is going to enhance a dish, but too much is going to ruin it. So, and that moves us into our last topic, purpose, why you show up. And let's be honest, there are easier jobs than public service. Some days we are like Jeff Foxworthy talking about, or not Jeff Foxworthy, Bill Engvall talking about being the guy who cleans out the porta potty. Sometimes all we do is catch crap all day long, right? So there are very few jobs that are more meaningful. Public service, I know this from this, doing my red mic every day. It's not going to get you trending on LinkedIn. I've been doing it for a year and a half. I've gotten maybe 2,000 followers for everything that I do. Standing ovations, cocktail parties, but it gives you purpose. Being a public servant is so wonderful. I applause to all of y'all. I mean, seriously, I mean that. I really do. But we don't show up for the applause. We show up because the work matters. We know that those deadlines are critical. We know that we're doing it with short funds. We show up because people depend on us. We show up because people believe. So in your job, ask yourself that question. Did you leave it better than you found it? Because that's the charge. That's the public trust. That's the quiet honor behind the public service. Leadership is not about clinging to power. It's like in the movie Good as It Gets. Going into that restaurant and they say, hey, well, you need to wear a jacket. We have a loaner jacket for you. That's what the power is. It's not your power. You're just using it right now. Because eventually you're not going to be in that same role. Someone else is going to have the job. Someone else's name is going to be on that nameplate on the door. Power is a loaner jacket. You're just wearing it for now. Steward that leadership while you can, though. For the people, for the process, and for those who come after you. That way, the next person who gets that jacket, you need them to be able to say, this jacket's in pretty good shape. It's not threadbare. It's clean. It works. Mission over me. Okay, back to public service.
Oh my God, that was so fun.
Okay, everybody's got a ladder in front of them. Sometimes those ladders look a little bit different. Being the son of a welder and a bank teller, sometimes the ladder I had might have had a missing rung, or it might have been a little rusty or something. Your job in public service really helps everybody, but it's just as important, if not more important, for the people on that second ladder. It matters when a kid gets licensed and they enter a profession because your agency cleared the backlog and kicked open that door. It matters when a consumer avoids getting scammed because your complaint process worked. It matters when someone files their documents correctly because you made the instructions clear. You may never meet these people in real life. They may never know your name. In fact, they probably won't know your name, but they're better off because you showed up. And that's what it's all about. Showing up, doing the work. Purpose has to be your compass. If your purpose is pointing north, you're not going to get lost. Ego's not going to carry you through the hard days. Only purpose will. And I always say this, and it comes across as harsh, and I don't really mean it that way, but nobody cares. Work harder. That's true. Nobody cares. Work harder. If things aren't working the way you want them to in your agency, nobody cares. Work harder. Get the job done. If something's in your way, move it. If something is inefficient, make it better. And again, I don't mean that to be harsh, but it's true. Life is hard. It just is. Make sure, Rodney Dangerfield, make sure you're looking out for number one, but don't step in number two. Okay. So get the job done. My younger son, last story about him, I promise. In T-ball, they didn't keep score during the regular season, but everybody knew what the score was. Every team got 5 runs or 3 outs. If you got 3 outs, the other team got to bat. If you got 5 runs, you got to go out in the field and they got to bat. Well, they didn't keep score. The kids knew what the score was. So Daniel's team was really good. They just obliterated people. End of the season, there's a postseason tournament, and then they keep score. Well, Daniel's team ended up losing by 1 run to a team that I think ended up winning the whole thing. After the game, I'm patting him on the back and I'm saying, Daniel, hey, you had a great season. You've got nothing to be upset about. You learned a lot, all the stereotypical stuff you say. And he said, they kept score today, Dad. It mattered. Wow. You're 6. Where did that come from? But this is the same kid that when we were trying to decide where he was going to play football, he decided he didn't want to play for the Pop Warner Dogs because that was flag. And he, quote, I want to hit people. So he ended up playing tackle for the Hill Country Cowboys. So I shouldn't be surprised that the other day on LinkedIn, I saw that he quoted, this is a direct quote from him. Work harder than those surrounding you and good things will come. Everything falls into the work harder category. Never be satisfied. So it's not that people don't matter. It's not that you don't matter, but our work does. It's not about being the hero. It's about being useful. And I will say, as far as my kid goes, yeah, he was wired differently, but seeing him say that, the work harder thing, my work is done. Sometimes that means you're going to have to work late in order to finish the report that nobody else will touch. It means getting the call on your day off and answering it anyway. Sometimes it means taking the hit so your team doesn't have to. Again, give them credit, take the blame. If you get nothing from what I'm saying today, remember that. Give credit, take the blame. That's going to build your integrity more than anything else. Covering for a teammate who's overwhelmed. It's like when Trey Bradford, football player, I saw it last fall, he caught an interception and he's running, and then all of a sudden you start shaking like that. His hammy was going out. If he had fallen down, no one would have blamed him. What did he do? He lateraled to somebody else, and they took it to the house and scored. He was putting the team ahead of himself. Again, nobody would have held him responsible, would have said a bad thing about him. Hey, great interception, Trey. Sorry you fell down. That was a bummer, But they remembered he tossed it. He let somebody else get the credit, get the glory while he's laying there holding his leg. Cover for a teammate who's overwhelmed. Passing credit up the chain, even if you did most of the work. It's offering to help a different department with clogged emails. It's doing the things that matter, that support people, process, and purpose. And I've got other things that I was going to say, but we started a little bit late, so I'm going to transition to the end. So I started state service in 99, left for 3 years in the middle, and then I came back, and I've been through reductions of force budget shortfalls and all of that. But I've been given a life with balance and purpose. And because of this career, I didn't miss my kids' ball games or scouting trips. I coached teams. I got to camp in the boundary waters between Canada and the US. That was great. I got to build a family and a career, and I got to serve the state that I love with people I respect. I am not rich, but I feel like I was made useful, and that makes me proud. Not just to myself, but of all of y'all too, and all the people I've worked with. Close your eyes again. And let me ask the questions again that I asked this morning. Are you acting with intention for all of the connections in your life? Are these connections part of an active part of what you can do, think, and feel? Or are some of them just background characters in the bigger story? I hope that I've helped you get to those answers, or at least gotten the gears moving that lead you to those answers. Go ahead and open your eyes. And that, as I say at the end of my live stream every day, is today's red mic message. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it helpful. I hope that you will join me tomorrow. And you'll see some of the stuff I skipped. Life is short. Drink the bourbon. I say it every day. I'm going to end with this story. Everybody laughs when I say that, but I could just as easily say life is short. Use the fine china. Life is short. Eat dessert first. Life is short. Squeeze the juice out of that orange, because that's what really matters. My best friend in the entire world, Scott Madsen, we called him Scooter. He got cancer. Well, a few years before he got cancer, I got him what for me at the time, and this guy was hard to buy for. He was single. If he wanted something, he just bought it, right? So I always had to get really inventive on what I bought him. So one year I bought him a really nice bottle of bourbon for me. Yeah, I'm sorry. And he said, no, we're not going to crack it. We're not going to crack it. We're not going to crack it. And then cancer got him and he died. His sister gave me that bottle. First drink out of it, I gave to him at his gravesite. I did the Boys to Men pouring one out for you. So remember, life is short. Drink the bourbon. Thank you.